Good morning, everyone. Karen, thank you so much for letting these kids teach us. And thank you for teaching them for all these years. There are 2 adult classes on Sunday mornings, which you would all be so welcome in, and 3.5 kids classes. So if at 9:30 you are longing for community, this is a good place to be. We are going to look at a rich young man. I'm going to read Mark 10 to you. As Jesus was setting out on a journey, a man ran up and knelt before him and asked, "Good teacher, what must I do to inherit eternal life?" Jesus said to him, "Why do you call me good? No one but God alone is good. You know the commandments. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness. You shall not defraud. Honor your father and mother." He said, "Teacher, I have kept all of these since my youth." Jesus looked at him, loved him, and said, "You lack one thing. Go, sell what you own and give your money to the poor, and you will have treasures in heaven, and then come follow me." When he heard this, he was shocked, and he went away grieving, for he had many possessions. Then Jesus looked around and said to his disciples, "How hard it will be for those who have wealth to enter the kingdom of God." But the disciples were perplexed at these words. But Jesus said again, "Children, how hard it is to enter the kingdom of God. It is easier for a camel to enter through the eye of a needle than for someone who is rich to enter the kingdom of God." They were greatly astounded and said to one another, "Then who can be saved?" Jesus looked at them and said, "For mortals it is impossible, but not for God. For God all things are possible." Peter began to say to him, "Look, we left everything and followed you." Jesus said, "Truly I tell you, there is no one who has left houses, brothers, sisters, mother or father, children or fields for my sake or for the sake of the good news, who will not receive 100-fold now in this age, houses, brothers, sisters, mothers, and children, and fields, with persecution, and in the age to come, eternal life. But many who are the first will be the last, and the last will be the first." For the last few weeks, we have been walking through the Gospel of Mark, looking at Jesus' systematic teaching. He was teaching his disciples what it means to follow him, and he covered many topics like love and humility, being a servant to all, making peace with friends and enemies. Last week, Rob looked at the most vulnerable in marriage and divorce and childhood. And this week, our reading deals with eternal life, rule following, wealth, and generosity. How do we follow Jesus' way in these sensitive and challenging areas? Will you please pray with me? God, you are good, and you love us with overflowing generosity and grace. We joyfully thank you for this. Teach us your transforming ways. We pray that your will be done in our hearts as it is in heaven. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. This passage in Mark 10 has been controversial and creatively interpreted throughout the Christian history. This is not surprising because we people don't really like others telling us what we should do with our stuff, especially with our money. Jesus' instruction to this rich young man, sell what you own and give the money to the poor, has been taken literally by the monastics when they take vows of poverty and do not own things. Others said Jesus surely meant this only for this particularly young rich man, or maybe for the extremely wealthy, or maybe for a very special inner circle of his followers, but not for us. Still others argued that Jesus' real concern in these verses is the attachment to wealth, not the possession of it. And then last, some look at this story and say it only means to teach us that salvation will not come through our good deeds, but from God's grace. And all of these interpretations have some validity. But this story is just not simply going to be reduced to a formula that every human being will implement. Jesus is offering us here a place to seriously wrestle with what it means to become part of God's kingdom here on earth. Just like our other scriptures where Job was arguing with God and the psalmist was wrestling with God, God allows us to wrestle with these complicated issues. Jesus wants us to wrestle with what it will look like for God's reign to rule on earth, in our own hearts, in the church, in our neighborhoods. For God's reign will surely lead us to the never-ending life, eternal life. That is what we hope for. The story starts with Jesus being on the way. He's starting a journey, but that can also be interpreted on the way. And he was on his way to Jerusalem, and he knew what was going to happen in Jerusalem. He knew he was on his way to the cross. The people who first started following Jesus were often called people of the way. They were following Jesus' way. While Jesus is preparing for this journey to where he knows he will give his life for humanity, he is interrupted by this rich man who says, "Good teacher, what must I do to live forever?" "Why do you call me good?" Jesus said. "Only God is good." Jesus is saying there are two categories: good God and people in need of God's goodness. There is no one else. There is not a group of good human beings who can do their own saving. Jesus is challenging the very premise of the man who came to ask him the question, because he is so preoccupied with his own goodness. When Jesus says, "Well, you know the rules," he says, "Yep, I know them." And the rich man could tally them off. Not killed anyone, not an adulterer, not a thief, not a liar, not defrauding people, honoring my parents. He is proud of his good deeds, it seems. But why does he come running and bow down before Jesus, searching for something? I believe all our tally marks for our good deeds will never bring us peace, because we know our outside, we can polish it up good, but we know the inside, and we know our secret failings. And for that, we all need grace. The young man's rule keeping had not given him peace. We can never save ourselves by doing more and more good deeds. Salvation is not a race where the good win the prize. Salvation is always going to be a gift from God, unearned, undeserved, and free for all of us. When Jesus looks at this man, when he says, I've been doing all the rules, he loves him, and he sees his lack. The man with many possessions lacks something vital. What does this man lack? Might he not realize that all of his good deeds will never earn enough for him to have eternal salvation? Might his lack be that he doesn't trust God's goodness, and he thinks that he will be extra good to help God out because he is fearful of God? Might he lack generosity to his fellow travelers? Might he lack love for those in need? We don't know for sure. But all of these things appear to have self-centeredness in the midst. And Jesus goes straight to that. The man comes and says, what must I do? So he believes he's going to be able to accomplish something and earn his eternal life. When Jesus tells him to sell things and give the money away, he cannot do it. His grip on his things is too tight. But how often are we in the same boat? How often do we allow our stuff to elevate us to a certain status, and we just do not know how to relinquish it and be humble? How often do we not trust God's goodness and that it will be freely poured out every time we mess up? Does the young man not want to be generous towards the needy because he thinks somehow they should get their act together and work a little harder and earn it? Both throughout history and still today, we often think wealth is an indication of God's blessing, and poverty is an indication of God's rejection. But Jesus never teaches anything of the sort. Jesus speaks contrary to that, how hard it is for those who have wealth to enter the kingdom. Last week, we looked at Jesus saying, the people who want to enter the kingdom must be like children, powerless, vulnerable, dependent. But how often do I want to be powerful and independent? I don't long to be viewed as powerless or dependent on others. The situation Jesus describes is comical. I can barely get a thread through a needle nowadays, and Jesus is talking about a camel going through the eye of a needle. Well, of course, that is totally impossible. But Jesus says it is easier to do that. You know, a camel weighs about the same as a 10-year-old child at birth. And as a full-grown camel, it weighs as much as 6-7 adults. Think of that going through a needle's eye. It is not possible. But Jesus says it is even harder for the wealthy to relinquish their self-sufficiency and trust God's grace for their salvation. Jesus' response makes 2 points. The blessings of wealth that we assume to be blessings are frequently a dangerous obstacle course. They lead us astray, away from trusting God's grace, into thinking, I can do it. And the other point he makes is that what is impossible with human beings is not impossible with God. In God's goodness, Jesus welcomed the one on the cross right next to him, and the people at his feet who were mocking him and cursing him, he also welcomes and forgives. When Peter goes on to say, well, look, Jesus, we've given up everything for you, Jesus says, no person can outgive God. A restored relationship with God will always be better than anything the world has to offer. Trusting God's love and grace is better than counting our own faltering, virtuous deeds. Learned generosity is better than self-centeredness. Walking in gratitude is always better than wealth. God's way will come with a cost. When the world's way are challenged, the world will fight back and harass those who are following a different way, just like the world did for Jesus. We will not remain unchanged when we follow Jesus' way. Just like the caterpillar, when it enters the cocoon, it has no idea what it needs to do to emerge as a butterfly. We can trust that we can accept God's grace, and this grace will transform us in ways that we cannot even imagine. May we long for this transformation that God is eager to give us. Let us pray. God, if possessions were corrupting barriers for this rich man seeking eternal life, may we trust that possessions can also be corrupting barriers for us. Expose our brokenness, transform us into your image, make us generous, joyful, caring, holy, a people who glorify you. Make us fully alive in your community. Remind us that the first will be the last, and the last will be the first. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.